chapter clicked in to College Volleyball Weekly on Viral Volley Media. Now here's your host, Rob on mic.
All right. Good day, everyone. And we are into week 2 after a fabulous week 1 of the 2024 NCAA Men's D1-2 volleyball season. As always, on screen, Brad Rothstratter of UC San Diego, Jay Hosick of George Mason, Dan Friend of Lewis, and Theo Edwards of CSUN. Thanks again, gentlemen, after a great number 1 episode to start off 2024. We will jump right into it. We got some news last week about some rule changes, and of course, I got to put it off of our pool of guys here who are in the know. So, allowance of the double announced by the NCAA last week in a volleyballmag.com article, and I wanted to get your guys' take on it because I actually threw it in a text that we were in discussion, and Jay responded, but I wanted to get everyone's take on it. So, Jace, go ahead and start off with it.
Well, the rule change hasn't, I don't know if it's officially been enacted yet. I think it's in a vote. I'm hearing conflicting stories. I talked to a couple of referees up in Santa Barbara that said they're not so sure it's going to pass. I don't know one way or the other. I'll comment on the fact, assuming that they're going to pass it. Yeah. Purists are going to hate it. People, old school traditionalists are going to absolutely hate it. People that are maybe, newer to the game, if you will, it really does the outcome of the play. If anything, it's worse if you're really chucking balls, but it doesn't affect the trajectory. You're not able to make the ball curve any certain way or go any certain way faster. It's just a way to be a little bit more athletic and maybe some of those, wonky plays, those out of system, just, guys reaching for something that's way out of his range and is able to put up a ball for his guy to hit. I don't think it's really that big of a deal, to be honest with you. I think it eliminates the issue of people yelling and screaming and throwing their hands up, and the crowd's going to still scream regardless because it's the crowd. I just don't think it affects the game that much in a negative way. I think it just, for more about the purists and the traditionalists, everybody can set the ball. Not everybody can be a setter. And the old days, it was such an art form, at least from my perspective. And I think it dumbs the game down a little bit from there, but really, for the most part, it doesn't affect anything, if you ask me.
Yeah. Thoughts on the panel here? Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I feel like this has been talked about quite a bit, and especially over the years. And I think one of the interesting things about it is you've watched the game evolve across the country, and on both the men's and the women's side, the tempos have gotten so much faster, from when it was when this game first, started, and they were chucking high balls to Jay Hosick on the outside, and
banana slug.
Yeah, and it's really changed a lot. I think that it's harder to call. The game is so much faster, and I think if you want to talk about a consistency and trying to find some sort of consistency across all reffing staffs, coast to coast, and especially I know this has been an issue on the women's side for sure, but I think if you can take this one out of it, it's such an a subjective call that if you can take this one out of it, I think it definitely levels the playing field without changing the game all that much. I agree with Jay. Like, I don't know that it really changes anything because, a lot of refs have already gone to this a little bit as it is. Just in this weekend up in San Diego or Santa Barbara, there were a couple times where guys were complaining about doubles, complaining about throws. They weren't called. And I don't know that it necessarily changes the game all that much. I think it only makes things better and easier for it to be consistent across the board.
Yeah. And did you have something to say?
I echo all that. To me, it's kind of what we've been doing for a while on the men's side, right? And now it's just kind of putting a formal rule in it where it was kind of some referee preference on if they were calling some of the doubles or some of them in certain situations. So yeah, I think it's good for us. I think it'll have a much larger impact on the women's side and a little bit more of adjustment there. But I think for the most part, we've been around that or in that realm of that. And at most that'll affect 2 points in a match. and that might even be a little bit generous. It could be one on a weekend.
Anything else to add, Dan?
I just think the FIVB doesn't call any doubles. Why are we calling doubles? So I mean, if you go watch the game at the international level, it's just makes it a little easier on our official. Whether I agree or disagree with the purist Pete, like I would rather see clean sets out of a setter. It's a skill position. But in terms of where our game's at and how it's being called and the burden on the officials, if they don't have to call doubles, it just makes it simpler. It makes it simpler for the fans when they see it. They're not worried about why they call a double here, but not a double there. And so I think it's probably the right move. I don't know about the nose ring thing. Wasn't that one on there too? Like,
Yeah,
hey,
that
you
was
can
on there
wear a nose-
also.
Get your
I
nose.
can't
caught.
wait for that to get approved. I can finally wear my my
You got the chain going from your nose to your ear. Like, that's great. I want to see that, Brad. Can you snap me a shot? So that'll be awesome.
yeah, tonight I'll send it over to you.
I just want to clarify two things. I wish we'd start looking at the throwing that's going on, the hitters across the board, and not this past weekend. It wasn't too egregious, but if you start watching more and more, it's becoming an integral part of every hitter's repertoire, if you will. Some of it's pretty good. It's tough to defend, and some of it is not. It's not good. It's eliminating the ability to hit a ball. And I want to clarify something that Theo said. You know, chucking up high balls to me back in the day, I was the worst out of system hitter you ever seen. It was a roll shot to a corner at best. So yeah, it wouldn't have helped my game at all. That's for sure.
Jay brings up a good point, though. You go watch some of the replays of guys when they take the ball, prolong the block contact, and throw it off. It's off the attacker. It's not off the blocker.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's a tough one because the official's going to call it off the blocker 9 out of 10 times. And you can sit there and say, hey, go watch the replay. It leaves the attacker's hands last. You know what I mean? And so it'll be interesting to see how this matriculates, just even at the international high levels, comparatively speaking, too, from that standpoint.
That double hand attack, you know, some people got it, some people don't. And I've seen more people that don't. So, but it's a developing part of the game because it is, as Jay said, it's becoming a part of the hitter's repertoire. And you know, even on the women's side, I was talking to Tyler Hildebrand this last season. Oh yeah, we do that for 15 minutes. Learn how to do that shot. So in any case, last week we had some unanticipated breaking news that was kind of already known, but the new name of the show is the CVW Beach, not top 15, but top 20, because the AVCA now going to a top 20 for the first time, and wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that first preseason poll because we actually met before it was released. It was released about 4 or 5 hours later, but I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on what came out last week. And let's start with Dan on that one, since he is our AVCA rep.
I think it's great. Another opportunity to recognize a lot of great programs that are some that are new, some that have been established, and they're always kind of maybe a little bit on the bubble. And it'll be great for those programs, those kids, those coaches, and those universities to have some recognition and work to climb up. You know what I mean? And so, and as our sport continues to grow across the board, it just gives some more opportunities for some of that stuff, which is, I think, good.
Good. Anyone else?
Yeah, to me, it just makes the matches matter a little bit more, you know. And I'm talking about the CSUN Grand Canyon match, like that was a really tough, well fought match. And, you know, if that's last year, that's the number 7th team versus CSUN receiving votes. And this year it's 7 versus 17. And it really kind of shows you that the difference in those 10 spots isn't that great, even at this point in the year. So I think it really kind of shows the depth and the quality of volleyball that a lot of these teams that would have just been receiving votes are able to perform and play at. So yeah, I think it's great for all the NCAA men's volleyball.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because one of the matches I was watching closely was obviously one of the CVW matchups. It was a receiving votes UC San Diego against number 20, Jay Hossig. So we'll let Jay comment on that one.
Well, no, I agree with Brad 100%. You know, we're in a moment in time where the game is expanding in terms of its viewership. I mean, you look at the women's game this past year; they had record viewership. But if you're an average fan of men's volleyball, you're looking for matches to watch. You're sitting there at home on a Friday, Saturday night. You're looking at a match you want to watch. When you're scrolling through all the numbers, or all the match lineups, if you see, number 13 against a blank ranked team, you're probably not going to watch it unless you have some vested interest. However, you see number 19 versus number 8, like Brad said, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that might be worth watching. And it's no different than maybe the teams if they were 3 years ago, but the difference is the ranking in front of it allows the average viewer to be able to say, oh, this is a team that is considered a better team in the country, and I want to watch good volleyball. And the teams that in years past are not the quote unquote traditional powerhouse names, like the USCs and the UCLAs and the Penn States and all that. Now all of a sudden you get to watch a Lincoln Memorial. Now all of a sudden you get to watch an NJIT. Now all of a sudden you get to watch a smaller name program because there's a number attached to it. It's not an ambiguous number. It's not just out there just to be out there. The coaches that are doing the polling, they're looking at what's going on, and these teams are rightfully deserving of that spot. And so I just think it's good for viewership. It's good to expand the growth of the game on the social media side.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on your point. So I was jumping around on Kerry Walsh Jennings' Instagram feed, and on her stories, she posted something from Front Office Sports. I didn't send this to you guys. Didn't think we'd go in, but Jay somehow gets me to segue all this, like what I think is useless information at the time ends up being relevant for our show here. But Front Office Sports put out a graphic saying that of the top 10 big news in women's sports, 4 of them were volleyball, women's volleyball related, in that Pro Volleyball Federation had their first draft, which is the pro league that's starting up in February. And then Pro Volleyball Federation signs with a major network, CBS. And then the NCAA volleyball title match sets a viewership record, which I should know that number off the top of my head, but I don't. And NCAA sets 2 volleyball attendance records. That was in their top 10 for the year in a non-volley publication. So growth of the game is important, and men should be able to piggyback on that. And we've got to piggyback on that, because I always tell people, if you like what you're seeing on the women's side, you got to see that on the men's side times 10, because that's what the pace is.
Well, and let's really just hit the nail on the head here. For years, the women's game has followed the men's game in terms of its style of play and its speed. But now the men's teams need to start taking lead and following what the women are doing in terms of social media and exposure. So we both can help each other on that pendulum. And I think it's a perfect marriage, if you ask me. If we just we got to strike while the iron's hot.
Well, perfect marriage means Theo Edwards there, because his social media at CSUN's kicked up this year, and it's noticeably a great job by your guys. But want to get your thoughts on this, and then what else you want, whatever you want to add on.
Sure. Yeah. Jay and I were talking about it this weekend. And one of the things that was really on the topic for us was how the tournament has expanded, but it's not expanding. It's expanding via automatic qualifiers, right? We're going to leave a lot of good teams at home. It's the absolute truth. And if everyone knows, how does any sport in the United States make money? It's the tournaments. It's the bowl games, right? These are how you generate funds. And so now I think this top 20, what it does is it helps our argument for, can't you guys see this could be an incredible tournament? This could be an incredible tournament for us one day. And obviously, I think we're constantly seeing the NCAA is failing in multiple areas. They're losing lawsuits in ways that they regulate certain teams and how they put together certain aspects of the sport. And for men's volleyball, I think they have it wrong. And if we could expand the tournament and we could have an opportunity to see 24 teams, 32 teams compete and have an opportunity, you're going to see all year long. We're going to be talking about it on this podcast. The teams in this 15 to 20 range can beat teams that are in that 7, 8, 9, 10 all day long. And we're going to talk about it here. We're going to see it happen over and over again. We almost saw Lewis do it just a few nights ago. So I think we got to continue to have these conversations. And obviously us moving to the top 20 is a fantastic move for men's volleyball, and something that's super exciting to hopefully one day we can see a massive tournament expansion and have an opportunity to see all of the best teams compete.
Well said. Well, with that, let's jump into our week one action. And rather than having me dictate what matches caught your guys' eyes and the results, I'm going to start off with Jay because he's been a little quieter this morning. I think it's because he's on the West Coast now.
Yeah, I got up early as opposed to being able to sleep in and, kind of have my morning coffee, which, I'm still enjoying right now to this very moment. There are a few things that caught my eye, and there's a couple things I want to mention at the end of this whole thing, but there was a few things that caught my eye. One is that, what Theo talked about, the teams 7 through 15, 16, they're going to be really just kind of beating each other up throughout the course of the year. And that's great for volleyball. It's great for the fans because there's parity. The top 5 teams are still pretty good. But I think there's a couple things that stand out to me. One, Dan and I ran into a juggernaut opposite in our matches that really made a difference and changed the game. We went up 2-0 against Santa Barbara and felt pretty good about our performance, and we're up in game 3, and then all of a sudden Jesse Bianchi decided to flip a switch and we couldn't stop it. And I think Dan, and when he was facing Penn State, John Kerr, I think the last time I checked, he got 438 attempts. And I don't know how his shoulder's still attached to his body right now. But the kid was unbelievable. And that's a grad student, everyone. That's not a first, second year kid who's not, got recruited and came in and is just really, really good. That's a grad student who sat behind Cal Fisher for the last 4 years. Let that sink in for a second. You don't think that kid's got a little chip on his shoulder trying to show everybody I should have been playing this whole time? But, one player can be the difference maker. And I think, there were great matches to be watched up in Santa Barbara. There were great matches across the country. Loyola going into Hawaii with 3 freshmen on the court and beating Hawaii at Hawaii. That's a big deal. And Lewis, who was a team that was rebuilding last year, all of a sudden going 5 with a powerhouse like Penn State in their place. I think we as voters and fans are going to start to notice it's not just about, winning a match, but if you're going 5 with somebody who's big, that's going to make a statement. So, that was, it was a great tournament. I'm stoked that I got to play Theo and Brad. Brad and I talked about afterwards, it was not the best looking volleyball by either one of our teams. It was our first match of the year, and I think it was his second. There were lots of, foibles and craziness and ugly volleyball being played, and he took the best of it from us. And as we moved on through the week, we got a little cleaner, and then I got to see Theo, and it's been a while since I've beaten Northridge, so that's always fun. And I just want to mention, that the AD must be paying attention because they lose to, number 20, George Mason, and all of a sudden they turn off the heat in his office because the kid's wearing a parka like he's out in the snow region. And he's in his office.
40 degrees in Southern California, Jay. It's 40 degrees. That's cool.
I mean, the rough and rugged streets of Nordhoff.
Listen,
it's like 75.
It is a blistering 52 degrees this morning. I don't remember the last time it was this cold, and I'm freezing.
Theo, I'm with you.
Dan is like,
go Columbia jacket, go
wussies.
heavy, yeah.
Meanwhile, all my guys are in shorts and tank tops, and they're sitting out by the pool right now at 52 degrees. It's kind of
Well, great calls on matches. How about you? Let's go to Brad on the matches that caught your eye, results.
Yeah, I think the big ones, I mean, the Loyola Hawaii, I think those are fun kind of battles to see. And it's really cool this time of the year to see the teams unfold and see what's going to happen, where Loyola starts with the lineup. And then I think it was in second or third set, they have a little bit spark with freshman setter Cole Schobel, freshman outside Jake Reed getting subbed in to go along with
Lucas Anderson,
the other freshman outside they had. And just seeing that roll over into that next night for them and seeing them win in 5 is really cool. And I'm a little biased. I spent a couple of years with those guys at the club level, but so seeing that unfold and like the story of that, and and then you have Lucas Anderson as a serving sub coming in and serving a bunch of points there in that 5th set against his former club teammate Tread Rosenthal, who's setting as a freshman for Hawaii, and just a lot of really good young volleyball players there. And then go over to Provo, and you see the Ball State versus BYU, and BYU with 2 really, really impressive wins there in strong fashion, and with a couple different guys, similar to last year. They didn't just have one main guy; they had a couple different guys stepping up on different nights. With Luke Benson being really good one night, and then you had Meeks Ramanis and Capono Brown being a little bit better the second night. So really interesting volleyball to watch, and it's fun seeing all these teams kind of put different pieces together and see how they all come together so early on in the year.
Without a doubt, the Hawaii match, Hawaii came out strong on night one, Hakas leading the way with 16 kills. But I was impressed with Tread Rosenthal, because if you come back in and you're following up a Jakob Tella for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm like, there's a ton of pressure on you. And I feel like he handled it great. And what was mind blowing is I think he just turned 17 or something like that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So, great future ahead if he just sticks with it and stays with the training there in Hawaii. And with all the USA stuff, he's only going to get better. So impressive. But, you actually touched on something there, Brad, in that fifth set. Proud mama moment. Lucas Anderson comes in. That's Anne Marie Anderson's son, by the way, commentator for ESPN, the Olympics, VNL, and all that. That was her son. Proud mama moment. She's got her social media blowing up. They're down 12-8. He serves some solid balls and basically Loyola goes on an 8-1 run. They're down 12-8 and win that match. So, and that was because of your OC boys. You seem to drop Cole Schlobel, Jake Reed, along with Lucas Anderson serve. But, Parker Van Buren, man, feel sorry for you, Dan. You're going to have to deal with that twice this year. So he's looking really good.
Got a few guys, Jacob Pasteur, Parker Van Buren. I'm not, it is what it is. So,
just chipping a little bit at a time there, Dan. All right.
yeah.
Let's finish out with Theo and his matches he caught.
Yeah, I always love that first week of volleyball on the men's side, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity for some crazy things to happen. And we saw some really, really great volleyball. The Santa Barbara tournament it did not disappoint. Just the competitive level, right? To watch, obviously, San Diego go 5 with NJIT and find a way to pull that out. Looking like George Mason was beating the brakes off of Santa Barbara. And somehow, and like Jay said, their opposite just comes to life. And as we're sitting in the stands watching it, we're like, is this a career night? It's starting to look like a career night. And he just kept killing every single ball. And we're like, yep, starting to look like a career night. And he turns around, they end up going 5, and Santa Barbara squeaks one out, survives it, really. And then the matches that we had, I think were really, really tight and super, super close and really competitive, and just a lot of fun up at that Santa Barbara one. And I told my guys, I think it was set 2 with the George Mason and CSUN match. I told my guys, I said, hey, listen, we have a podcast on Monday. Jay cannot go 0-3. He can't go 0-3 this weekend, guys. He's a great friend of mine. I know it's 32-32. You guys want to finish this. We're going to let him have it. We're going to let him have this one. So we went ahead and we let George Mason take it away. We gave that one to Jay. Jay, that's my gift to you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's. But no, in all seriousness, it was a lot of fun. And George Mason played great. They got some really, really talented players. And I think they're going to make some noise in the EIVA this year. Cross to the other matches, I thought BYU had 2 statement wins. And I think the bigger question is Ball State as good as we all think they are? And what's always interesting about those early matches is they could mean absolutely nothing, honestly. And we could see Ball State turn around and start rocking and rolling. But it's always interesting to see 2 sweeps like that. And, it'll be cool to see what Donan does to get those guys to rally and bounce back in the following weeks. The other ones that stood out, definitely the Loyola one. I thought that was super, super interesting. And then the Lewis one. I think we got to have a conversation about that. I had picked Lewis to beat Penn State and upset them, and they were damn close. they were damn close and took them to the brink. And it's a testament of what Dan's doing with Lewis and some real podcast power over here. So it was a great first week. Fun to watch.
Well, so Jess Bianchi was the opposite that you are referring to from UC Santa Barbara. transfer over from Orange Coast College, a Laguna Beach kid, 51 kills in 2 nights of play. Then he came across Grand Canyon, and Grand Canyon found a way to just contain him. But I
Well,
mean, still 51.
he had to have ran out of steam. I mean, he was hitting so many balls. And I think what that first night, how many kills did he have?
31.
And he hit 531 and 479 those 2 nights. Wow. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible.
Thanks for reminding me, Theo. Appreciate it.
Now, Dan, did I skip you? I think I did. I get your picks. I'm like,
No,
I've been
you
chattering
skipped
with
me.
notes.
It's okay. You know,
Go ahead. No, we
No.
always want to have you down there, especially that great picture of you and Pav after your guys like long alley brawl brawl.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little different direction. So talk about Fort Valley State, Morehouse, and Central State. So, Nakobe Visuals is doing some social media stuff, and it was great. I thought he took some clips of those schools when they're playing against like a UCLA and some things like that. And so giving those guys a little bit of love, but just, you know, those programs getting out there and other institutions finding ways to schedule them and promote what the SIAC is trying to do, which was really, really good, and giving those kids experience. I mean, I watched Central State play Penn State the first night, and those guys are just jacked to be playing in Rec Hall, which I can only imagine is the same thing for Fort Valley and Morehouse out at UCLA and SC and Pepperdine. And so, again, just great to see the growth of volleyball and see those schools compete and those kids get those opportunities, which will only make them better down the road. And so, and outside of that, early year volleyball, it's awesome. So all these guys playing each other out at Santa Barbara, and whoever's surviving on the third day is just hoping they get a few pieces together. But the other thing to talk a little bit about is, so you see Loyola win, you see him going to Stanford last night and play their second group or whatever he might be doing. And then you'll probably see that again, they play tonight. Does he bring out what we think is the starting group, and what does that match look like where some of Stanford's players now are going to play back to back? So it'll be interesting to kind of see that dynamic. If they go out of the 2 weekends 2-2 walking into playing UCLA, I think they're in a pretty good spot as they open up the year and get some valuable game reps for all of his guys, not just, hey, who we might think the 7 or 8 starters are in terms of that. And then I think the Ball State thing's interesting because Tanisha, you know, he's not on the court yet. Yeah. And so like, does he ends up on the court? That's a totally different team. And so like, how's that play out over the next month? And does he find a way back on the court for whatever reason that might be, injury or whatever else is going on? So, but I certainly think he's an intricate piece in that puzzle a little bit from that standpoint. And then Damon took the first game off Ohio State. And then Ohio State looked like they turned on the pressure for sure. And Jacob was lighting it up from the serving line, but that was another match where like all of a sudden you're going to say, hey, we're going to see an upset from Damon, who's certainly done some nice things over the past few years. And so.
Great stuff, Dan. Gosh, so many things went through my mind, little side notes on everything that you've said there. But first of all, the freshest one was Jacob Pastor. A video went viral last night of him popping a jump serve and just beating someone from Damon. Thing went off of him and into the rafters, which you can't even see. And the caption said 80 miles per hour is what it was. And I put in the caption, like, was it really 80? I got a response from none other than Cameron Gillen, the guy who received the pass or the serve from Damon. He's like, I can confirm it was 80 miles per hour. So, but yeah, actually Cameron Gillen had a great night as well. He led the way on the Damon side of things, but Ohio State turned it on, and that's a good team right there. Regarding what was called the HBCU SoCal Challenge, that was the teams of Morehouse and Fort Valley State. They faced off with Pepperdine, UCLA, and USC, and what a great experience for those teams from the SIAC. You know, they had a ball. Their social was going bonkers because they were having a ball. I mean, we had incredible weather the whole time they're out here, and I know they were doing their beach Santa Monica thing, but you know, more importantly was the play. And Spera and UCLA hosted a reception on one of the nights, and you know, I was looking all over. I did not realize that one of the administrators in the athletics at UCLA was a alumni of Morehouse. So he was the keynote speaker, and gosh, what a great opportunity. And if anyone's been in that area where they have all the receptions at UCLA, that's a nice room there. and have that kind of setting with all those teams being introduced to the game and the potential it could be. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, you're inspiring, up to like 60 other individuals in that room to do it better. So, and to grow the game. But
Yeah, and those matches, I don't think it's no surprise. Those matches are not those teams coming into those powerhouses and expecting to win. They want to play well, but a lot of them are first, second, third year programs. What they're doing is they're showing their kids, this is what it looks and feels like live. Now, those guys and those teams are going to go back to their gyms and they're going to start to try to recreate some things. And the coaches of those teams, they know how it's done, but now the players know how it feels. And that's where some real progression is going to start.
Can I piggyback something? So I had an email yesterday that I had to respond to, and this may be a topic later on the road, but Division II is getting ready to vote whether or not to lower the number of teams that required to create a championship for a sport from 50 to 35. And the email I got says, how does that affect men's volleyball? And I was asked to respond because I'm actually skipping that meeting right now to hang out with you guys. But anyway, but basically my response was like, we're in this really good growth phase of men's volleyball. And if D2 separates off from men's volleyball, it has a really negative impact, I think, in terms of where we're growing. There might be a time 10, 15 years down the road where there's 50 or 60 D1s or 50 or 60 D2s, and it's a good time to break off. But the opportunity for Division II schools to compete in the realm with Power Fives, mid-majors, and all this stuff, and the notoriety that it brings to the campus, to the kids, and the experiences that they get from that is huge. And I think it'd be a missed mark and short-sightedness from some maybe Division IIs that maybe aren't competing necessarily where they want to on the overall growth of the game and where we want to be. Now, certainly I speak from the flip side of our program, but that was how I responded in the email, and I gave them kind of some background and backstory of it all. But I think it's gonna pass, and that doesn't automatically mean Division II starts, because each, rifle's different and hockey's different and all that stuff. But I do think as it moves towards some of that, hopefully we can protect our sport in the growing direction it's going a little bit.
Yeah, good piece there. I was going to throw a little, unexpected question, a little curveball, but this one's got a question over a direct message. It was specifically for Jay. I thought I'd entertain it because we got some good fans now, good loyal fans listening from a TMU M Volleyball is the handle. Special request for Jay. Jay, what was going through your mind as a coach when the scouting report on UCSB went out the window with their first set lineup?
Well, I may have said this reference in episodes past, but I'll give the reference again. I'm going to do my impression of the opposing coach that played against Wilt Chamberlain during his 100-point game at halftime. Hey, who's got Wilt? So, the kid went ballistic, attacking wise. I don't remember being wowed by serve or block or defense. He may have had some that I'm not trying to take anything away from his performance, but obviously I was focusing on his attack, his ability to find range and open spots in the court. And he hit it and find it every time. And when we did get a block, yeah, that was pretty much worth celebrating. But that's a tough thing to do. And opposites are the guys that really only have three jobs. It's hit the snot out of the ball, serve the snot out of the ball, and block the snot out of the ball. And I know if you can get two of those three or all three on a given night, hey, that's a bonus. But hitting the snot out of the ball and just chucking it up to him every once in a while to get a kill, kid's legit. It was a hair pulling moment. I'll say that.
That'd be
Jay,
just
if I
beyond
can intervene. That the internet user was wondering, because Santa Barbara started that match with their backups. It was a different group, and he was curious what you were thinking when they started the backups that first set.
Oh, is that what they were asking?
Oh, because it's Theo that sent the question. Oh, gotcha.
Well, listen, I think if they watched the night before his performance, I might have started my B-side too. We weren't very good. But our guys, at the end of the match, a couple of guys talked about that. And they said, listen, if anybody starts their B-side guys and we don't handle them the way we're supposed to in the first game, it's a sign of us not being able to rise to the occasion, and it's a sign of disrespect if they don't pull them out and put somebody else back in, and they did, and we handled them in the second game too. So I think and listen, it's early in the year. He could be just mixing some things up, but Rick doesn't want to lose, so he put his other guys in there and thought they can get some playing time, maybe get a win against a team that may not be really crisp at the moment. But I have no complaints about it. I might have done the same thing if I watched me play the night before too.
Yep.
Can
All
I
good
just
stuff.
before I know we got
Yes.
other things to talk about, and I'm a little bit on time. There are two things I want to talk about quickly about the Santa Barbara tournament. First and foremost, there's a reffing crew up there that I've known for 25 plus years. Rick McLaughlin, Tony Chan, John Park. Those are the guys that off the top
Hey,
of
Rick
my head, I
Olmsted.
remember.
Rick
Yeah,
Olmsted.
Rick Olmsted. Sorry,
I didn't know
said Rick-
McLaughlin was repping his own
Sorry.
matches.
He's
I was looking at
moonlighting.
my
He does the
notes.
morning match.
Ah, that's how he beat Jay. I got it now. I didn't see that.
Rick Olmsted, obviously the father of Olmsted up at BYU, the coaching duo. Rick is a stalwart of Santa Barbara and of the reffing community. And to show you the level of friendship that we've developed over the years, for those of you that know me, when I first started coaching at Santa Cruz, I wore flip-flops when I coached, just because I was young and dumb and stupid and I didn't know any better. Sure enough, I walked into the gym my first night, and John Park and Rick and Tony were there, and Rick is on the stands, sees me walking across the back of the gym, sees me, goes and sit up in the bleachers somewhere. A timeout is called, and all of a sudden a young lady walks over to me and she said, Rick said that if you're going to wear flip-flops for the match, he's going to give you a red card. And I looked at him, and he turns around, he gives me this little smile and literally pulls out a red card and looks at me. And so, those are some fond memories of people that I've grown the game with. But here's what Rick's really doing. He works with a group and runs a homeless clothing distribution thing. So what basically has happened, and Theo has been a part of this, any volleyball team that's out there, if you have changed over from one clothing company to another and you have a bunch of surplus, or maybe at the end of every year you've got a surplus of shoes or socks or sweatshirts and sweats, what Rick does is he takes that collection and he distributes it to the homeless people that he works with. That's a really good thing to do. If you know Rick, you know that he's got a good heart and he just wants to help people. And I told him, man, when I go back, I'm going to take a look at our stockpile and see what we've got. And I know Theo's already donated some. I know Long Beach State has donated a bunch. I know UCLA's donated a bunch. So if any coaches out there, you want the information to be able to send to Rick maybe a care box package, email me at George Mason. I will forward you that information for Rick so that you can send it to him. I know he would appreciate it. And obviously the people that are receiving these goods, they really appreciate it too.
Well, and to echo that, one of the things that Rick has expressed to us is a lot of those homeless that he's working with are tall and they're bigger people, and they struggle to find them shoes. They struggle to find them sweatpants and pants that fit. And so the movement to try and get some of these oversized clothing that we all have access to and get them to the homeless people that really need it is just fantastic. And Rick is doing an awesome job with it. So
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I echo those same statements of all you guys who've been working with Rick. I've known him for a very long time as well, believe it or not. And I mean, he may look salty on the outside, but he's all sugar on the inside. So,
And
he
still pretty
does-
salty at times. I love that about him. I love it.
it's like, it's games, not sets, Rob. It's games. I'm like, whoa, back to the 80s. Come on.
Yeah.
But
Love it.
but he's also on the beach, so I see him very regularly here in Southern California, and he's always got some kind of good jokes, some about himself, which is funny, but which I'll share in another episode because I know we're running behind, and Jay's got a hard stop as he's getting ready to take on the Anteaters of UC Irvine in his old office area of Crawford Hall Court. So with that, I wanted to get you guys players of the week, because that went really big last year, and I started doing the graphics of your guys' choices of players of the week, and could be a tough one this week because a few names already been thrown out. So let's start with Brad. He's been thinking long and hard, I think.
Oh, yeah. There's a couple ways we could go here, but I'm gonna keep it up in Santa Barbara from the tournament. Jess Bianchi came to mind, but I'm gonna give a shout out to Nick Slight. He ended up earning MVP of the tournament. Him and Camden Gianni was the opposite there, but set really, really well. And I think, they have some new guys in some new spots, and they're trying to figure out what that looks like. But they were able to really kind of get things humming, and there's some stretches early on and some stretches even in that Santa Barbara match where it wasn't perfect. But his experience, his ability to lead, his ability to set and run an offense was tough for us to stop, and really tough for everyone to stop. So Nick Slight gets my player of the week.
Well, your team's video on the bus ride home about your all tournament honoree hitting negative something one night and then 500 the next night and got all tournament team, they were bagging on him. I'm like, wow, no love on that bus on the way home.
Gotta keep it real.
Let's go over to let's go Theo on his player of the week.
Sure. So I think I'm going to throw out Luke Benson. Night 1, 17 kills, 762 for BYU, and just one heck of a performance, especially to do it against a team like Ball State. The other one that I got to throw in there, and we mentioned this just briefly, is Jacob Pastor. 18 kills. He only hit 263, but we all saw that 80-mile-per-hour clip. And I don't know if they registered that thing on a gun, but from a video perspective, that is one of the fastest serves I have seen in a really, really long time. So obviously he got it going from the service line and did some nice things, and definitely got to give him a shout out. So those are my two: Luke Benson, Jacob Pastor.
Keone Thiem, I've seen him hit a 78 because I was right next to the gun when he hit it, and that was gnarly looking. So I can't even imagine what 80 looks like.
We're not seeing very many of those. 80 is that's an international level for sure.
Let's go over to Dan.
I'm gonna John Kerr. I mean, he was in front of me. So
he's all over you, not in front of you.
Yeah. So I think really nice performance by him, and even when we slowed him down on the 4 to get to 5th, they found him a couple times again in the 5th, and so but it almost kind of silently got 30 kills, and I think all the coaches know what I mean to say that. You kind of look up, and all of a sudden we're in game 3 or early game 4, and it's like he's at 26 already, and you don't even quite realize it from that standpoint. And so, but really nice job by what I would say is kind of a quiet killer. He's not this super loud guy, but he's certainly got a competitive piece about him, and he did a nice job. And he served really well, which isn't in the stat line. He's kind of got this float that's coming down from a high angle because he's a big guy, and can really pay some damage. And it got us on a game one time, and so so he's doing a couple different things out there versus just attacking the ball right there. So
Dan, I was going to ask you about your match against him. I know we're kind of tangenting a little bit, but Toby Ezeonu has been on fire, and it seems your middles may have contained him, because he didn't get Toby numbers like he normally has been getting so far.
Toby eyes in the last 2 points of the 5th game, so I've been on the Tyler Mitchum side of that, and I've had that guy, and so Schwab, he kind of tossed a couple in there from 8-9 feet when this kind of drift ball up, and you just can't stop it. People couldn't stop Tyler. They can't stop Toby when he's on that set right there. And so, but yeah, I think we did a couple things, but ultimately they found him when they needed to. So
yeah.
And he serves the ball. He serves the ball almost, I don't know what it is, 65, 70. Sometimes he unloads on this kind of hybrid float. It's more of a hybrid jump serve thing, and it comes at you with some pace. So
there we go. He got you from the service line and the middle. So finish out with Jay's player of the week.
I'm just waiting for it. It's going to come. Toby's going to learn how to hit the naked 2-ball fake pump, and it's going to be nasty. All the guys that they mentioned are well deserving. Obviously, Bianchi's my call. I just, you do everything you can, and when the kid still finds ways to get kills, it's quite impressive to see. And I'm, unfortunately on the receiving end of it, but at the same time, kudos to the kid who, there's a few guys in that gym that have been working at that position for a while, and he's coming in and saying, hey, I want the position for good. So I'm going to give him the love. I'm going to give one more shout out to one of my boys, played for me for 4 years, Che Cooper, outside hitter at Fort Valley State. watched some of the highlights from him playing against UCLA. Got some big swings and some big kills. Super proud of you, kid. I know you're doing great things out there, and I'm just super stoked for you.
All great calls by our coaching panel, which brings us now to what you watching in week 2. And there's a lot, over 30 something matches. And that was all I was able to input. I stopped because it's getting too late to input all of them. So, but there are a lot. Feel free to have at it. And let's see who looks ready. Jay, you look like you're like super prepared this morning.
Well, super prepared is one way to look at it. I'm really interested to see what Loyola does against BYU. I know they're playing Stanford tonight. I want to see what they do against BYU. I believe that one's at home. So Loyola is going to be back from a long road trip, maybe get a few nights of rest in their own beds. That will help out a little bit. BYU is a team that has resurged over the last couple of years. They had some rebuilding years there. And I'm interested to see those two teams go at it. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Charleston and Queens. In two names that kind of in opposite ends of the spectrum. Charleston had a fantastic year last year, had a long run in the beginning of the year with a lot of wins in a row. They lost a large number of those guys that were part of that team. But Luke is a really good recruiter, and he's bringing in a lot of kids from other places and foreign countries. And I'm interested to see what Charleston looks like. Queens, just joined the MIVA. Jeremy over there is doing a nice job of building that program. And so I'm interested to see what happens there. Those are the two matches I'll be paying attention to.
All right, let's jump over to Dan.
Yeah, I want to see what Lindenwood and Grand Canyon do. They play twice. Lindenwood returns AJ Lewis on year 9, whatever that might be. Do you know what I mean? And so, so I'll be curious. It'll be Lindenwood opening up, and they've got some nice pieces. And then, I mean, I got a few others, so I don't want to steal people's, but I want to see San Diego and Ohio State. You guys play, right, Brad? So, yeah, I think it'll be a little bit more of a test for Ohio State, and I'm curious to see how that goes. And one other one I'll pick is Long Island comes out, and we saw Long Island win their league last year, and they're playing Pepperdine and SC, and what do they have for pieces, and what are they doing? And so that'll be a good test for them early on. So,
yeah, all right, we'll go to Theo.
Yeah, I think tonight is gonna be a fun one, right? Loyola and Stanford. I think that's gonna be a good matchup. Obviously, we haven't seen Stanford, but I think the consensus is they're going to be pretty darn good this year. So I think it'll be good to see them, and then also see how Loyola responds coming off that big win. Definitely still curious in Irvine as well, right? And seeing them. So George Mason takes them on, and I think George Mason having 3 matches under their belt, getting a little bit of the jitters out. Be interesting to see how they take on UCI, because I think UCI is going to be great, and it's going to be a really good matchup for them. So those are the two I'm watching.
And then Brad.
I forgot how much it stinks going last whenever we're doing this, but I would have watched Stanford Loyola tonight, but I'm married into a household of Husky fans, so I'll be cheering for UW tonight and watching that. And I think really the BYU UCLA going out to Louis Loyola, I think those are going to be some really good matchups to get to see a lot of teams that all had really good showings in the opening weekend, and seeing them continue to play against high-level opponents for back-to-back weekends is always, you learn a lot more about your team going into that second week. So I think both those, or all 4 of those matches out there, are going to be really high-level and entertaining, and we'll keep learning more about all those top teams.
Yeah. I want to add mine because I was surprised I didn't hear these ones, but obviously 2 teams in the Big West haven't seen action. That's UC Irvine and Long Beach State. Long Beach State faces Long Island this week, and UC Irvine faces the Fighting Jayhawks, also known as the Patriots. But they have a busy week, so I'll be working those. But UC Santa Barbara and Stanford square off twice this week, and that should be a good one. Those are 2 grinding teams. I know one's younger than the other, but those coaching staffs are preparing for those big ones. BYU at Loyola, and then BYU at Lewis. That's I know, after Dan's performance against Penn State, this could be a knockdown, drag out brawl over in Romeoville. So that should be fun to watch as well. So
I gotta throw one more in there.
All right.
Pepperdine and Lincoln Memorial.
Oh, yeah.
That could be interesting. That could be a really, really interesting one.
Are you calling something there, Theo? It kind of sounds like you're calling something.
I don't know that I'm ready to make any calls, but I think
Lincoln Memorial at number 19 in this the preseason poll. So that's a great
well,
call.
Does anybody know what the situation is with Cash over at Lincoln Memorial? So obviously he's going to the women's side. Dan, can you touch on that?
Well, yeah, just Cash went to, you were saying it, went to the women's side, and they elevated their assistant to the head coach. So, yeah. So,
Yeah. So
Was
be
this
interesting
right
to see
before the
kinda-
season started?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
what I meant, Dan, like on the timing of it. Like what's kind of the,
yeah, I don't know. Like, we don't know what's going on in their gym, though. Do you know what I mean? I think, like, they might have finally split the position, which honestly, I think they should do. It's the same thing that happened with Nikki at McKendree. They're finally splitting that position. And it might have been, they might have been setting it up the whole time. Like, and the guys might know it too. So we look at it from the outside perspective going, hey, why would they do it right now? But they might have timed it like that and been like, Cash is still helping in the backside, but as they walk into the season start, you know, he's going to be the guy and he's the main guy in terms of that. So I don't know if we know all the details, and I think they probably had it, knowing Cash, they probably had it set up, and this is how it kind of worked out in terms of that from that side. So
Yeah, to me, I heard a few things that just it was kind of known before it was
Right.
known to everyone else.
Well, always good stuff. Oh, go ahead, Theo.
yeah, that's what I figured. But they both of them have done such a tremendous job over there. So it'll be exciting to see them get the year started and obviously to face off with a team like Pepperdine, who's got a ton of talent. It'll be fun.
Yep. Well, with that, that concludes episode 2 of our 2024 season of NCAA Men's Division 1-2 volleyball here on CVW, not the men's top 15, but the top 20. But a discussion came out on Volleyball Talk within the last 2 weeks about coverage and all that. And the best way to support these guys and the game and its growth, follow their programs on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, click on their websites, follow their programs, follow the organization they're tracking, everything, follow the publications. I'm volunteer as with all these guys. So click on volleyballmag.com, click on Off the Blog, go to the AVCA website, go to the NCAA website, and go to all their social and engage. They need to see that there is this population of people that just follows men's volleyball here across the nation. So with that, Dan Friend of Lewis, we've got Brad Rothschild of UC San Diego, Theo Edwards of CSUN, and Jay Hosick of George Mason. Thanks again, as always. Rock solid episode. Looking forward to catching you some next week. Jay, tomorrow. So thanks, guys.
Good luck this week.
See you,
Good luck,
boys.
guys.
Good luck.
Hey, guys.
Thanks for listening to College Volleyball Weekly. Be sure to follow Rob Aspero at the Rob on the Mic on Instagram and at Rob on the Mic on Twitter.